So I just stepped out and had a cigarette. But since that disappearance, I mean, whatever about the other stuff I mentioned, like I was arrested, drug possession. I did a 2 to 4 or whatever in Wyoming, for like a quarter, I think it was, not even it was a personal use size of meth, back then. Yeah, that was 2002, I think. Actually, it's almost like I was being stalked and harassed by the police, honestly. But at any rate, there's a lot of like hoodoo, like kind of shit going on. But yeah, that was 911, probably. Yeah, that's all we want to fuck up. So I ended up, on a prison diversion thing. I was arrested once in California. I had 4 ecstasy tablets. And I had $3,800, which was had withdrawn from the bank. It was from an inheritance or whatever, but they arrested me for intent to sell. I had missed my court date in Wyoming, and when I was doing 4 months, I think 3 months or something, on a prison diversion in Wyoming, in California. After 60 days or 30 days or something like that, 15 days or something, some small short amount of time, they were supposed to let me out. And they went a day over, and they didn't, because I told them that I wanted to go to Wyoming to do my sentence there, so I didn't have anything, behind me. And since I had missed my court date, how I got arrested there, though, in Wyoming is kind of weird because I was driving. It was the middle of the night. I had decided, even though 911 was going on, I had decided to go to New York. I was going to I was going to visit for the weekend just to see what it was like. And I got some money out of the bank or whatever. Was going to go to New York for the weekend by myself, see what it was like. I wasn't really thinking about 911, and stuff like that. I hadn't heard that there was any kind of travel bans or anything like that anyway, and it was a few months later, so I was going to go. It was November. I had a PT Cruiser, actually, and I was in a fatal accident, I guess you could say. My car was flipped, which was almost a repetition of history. For a week after I got it, it was flipped. I was driving down the street. This is kind of confusing, but I was driving down the street, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, I guess. And I wasn't speeding. I was well within the speed limit, and suddenly, I didn't see anything in the road or anything like that. I was alone. There wasn't anyone else in the car, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw like a body of water, like the Troxler effect, I think is what they call it. And then suddenly the steering wheel of the car jerked to the right, almost as if of its own accord. And my hands, I kept both hands on it, 10 and 2. And before I could slam on the brakes, do anything, the steering wheel like swung to the right, yanked like really hard and fast. And this is really surprising to me. I mean, I'm surprised by it when I think about it now. And I still don't know what the long-term effects of this accident are because it was pretty horrendous. And there was nobody else involved, no other cars or anything. I was the only one in the lane. I was in the proper lane. And the steering wheel yanked to the right, both hands at 10 and 2, and without white knuckling the wheel. And before I even knew what happened, both my hands stayed on the wheel. The car must have flipped, hit the top. Like when it yanked, it must have like flipped over, landed on the top, then bounced again and landed back on the tires. And I think it was almost like in the other direction. The driver's door was facing back up the lane of travel that I was driving in. And when I got out, I looked, and my cell phone was like in the middle of the street, like on the yellow line or whatever, and it was just like sitting there all like, whatever, and the car was just completely totaled, like smashed, caved in, like, I mean, I was standing right in the middle, between the cell phone and the car. And the first thing to come around the corner or whatever to come into view was the sheriff's car, and there must have been, I don't know, like 30, 40 cars behind it, it seemed like, which I thought was also really strange and kind of odd. And instead of calling an ambulance or anything, we called like a wrecker or a tow truck or whatever, and they came and got the car, and yeah, I went, rented a truck, and blah, blah, blah. So eventually, a couple of days, maybe a week later, the truck was taken. The rental truck was taken. I was pulled over. They asked me some questions or whatever. They towed the rental truck away and left me standing on the side of the street in the middle of the night. And I walked back to the BART station in Oakland or whatever, down the street to the BART station. At like 3 o'clock in the morning, I finally took the BART or whatever, the subway back to the city afterward, and eventually I ended up with a Jeep Liberty to replace the PT Cruiser that was totaled, insurance and all that. And I decided I'd go to New York for the weekend. Even though 911 was kind of still going on, but it was November, a couple months later, so I decided I'd go to New York. I wanted to see what it was like. I was considering finding a cheaper apartment and stuff at the time. I don't know if I was going to move to New York or not, but I had found in the paper or in the online, I had found a live workspace for like $900 a month, which was better than like the 1,700 or whatever that I was paying already. That wasn't my intent in going there. Like, it wasn't going to move, but I did want to go and see what it was like because I'd never been there before, and I had the money, I could afford it. And I was an adult, or whatever. So, so I had, just that little tiny bit of personal use meth with me at the time, and I was grieving a personal loss at the time as well. I got to Wyoming. It was really late at night. It was snowing, and the roads weren't really in bad shape or not. But I started getting drowsy and stuff, and feeling like a really massive headache. So I pulled over on the side of the road. I must have been maybe 5 miles outside of Green River, Rock Springs, Green River, or something like that. I think I could see lights and stuff further down, but at the time that I pulled over, I didn't really notice. I pulled over. I slept for a couple hours, whatever, and when I woke up, I pulled back onto the road, and as I started driving, within a minute or two, I guess, wasn't long. I was pulled over. They asked me some questions. Asked me if I had any family there. Asked me if they could search the car. Asked me if I had any scars or something. And they told me I was swerving. That I was swerving. That I had been swerving. They didn't say that's why they pulled me over. They only said that I was swerving, which I actually wasn't. But I guess it didn't really matter. I mean, there were two men with guns, and so I told them yes, that they could search the car. They went through the car, and in the glove box or in the little glove compartment, they found a like little personal use of meth or whatever, and asked me what it was. And I told them it was personal use. So they arrested me. They took me to. Must have been. I told them I was going to look for a hotel. That I was on my way to New York, and I was going to visit for the weekend, and that I wanted to look for a motel in town or whatever to stay overnight, and that I pulled over because I was getting a headache and stuff, or that I was feeling sleepy and I didn't want to drive. I didn't want to keep driving, so I pulled over for a couple of hours, slept or whatever, because I didn't know if they had driven by, like while I was pulled over on the side of the road or whatever or what. But the town must not have been 5 miles away, I guess, and So they arrested me, gave me a felony possession charge. Eventually, around the 1st of January or so, I guess, I think it was like January, it seemed like it was after the New Year, they released me, gave me my car back. It released me, and they must have gone through it because on the back seat there was like this big black huge like grease hand, where the person had put like grease all over the back of the seat and stuff. The guy told me go as soon as I got out, as soon as they let me out. Yeah, I was pulled over again. Like as soon as they released me, I had a learner's permit at the time. I was getting a driver's license and stuff. But as soon as and it expired while I was in county there, for that couple of weeks or whatever, 3 weeks or something, months or something like that. While they were getting my court date established and all that. And as soon as I got in the car, I must not have driven half a mile. I barely got out of the parking lot or whatever, and I was pulled over. And the guy asked me what I was doing, and I told him I was just been released, and I had to go to, back to California or whatever. And he told me, go west and don't come back. And since my learner's permit thing to get a license would have had expired or whatever it was, but he said, his exact words were, go west and don't come back, young man. And that was the end of December, beginning of January of 2003, I guess. 2002 is what it would be, the end of 2001, at the beginning of 2002. So I drove 19 hours back to San Francisco, and then I never made it to New York, so I still don't know what it's like. I drove 19 hours back, and he had said don't come back, and even though I had a court date or whatever, I wasn't sure what to do about that, so I just let it slide. And then it was in March or April, I guess, of 2002 is when I got pulled over and arrested in California. Ended up in county, and that's when I told they put me on a prison diversion thing to do some like drug classes or whatever it was, and I told them I wanted to go to Wyoming to finish that sentence. I didn't want to leave that like hanging open. So they scheduled to have me transported, and after 15 days, if they don't transport you, I think is how it goes, they're supposed to release you. And the 15th day came, and they still hadn't, started moving me to Wyoming yet. And the guy told me there's no 14-day rule or something in your world or something like that. And then like 2 days later or something, they put me in a van and transported me to Wyoming so I could finish my sentence, so I could do it. So we were in I was in a white transport van with a couple other people. Went from San Jose or whatever, San Francisco, San Jose is where the county was, and all the way down to LA, and then from LA, like all the way to like Wyoming or whatever. And somehow they made it from LA to Wyoming in like 16 hours or something like that. And it took me 19 to drive straight across from Wyoming, straight across, and then down into San Francisco from like Eugene, Oregon, or somewhere like that, or Northern California, or something down in. And LA's like, I don't know, hundreds of miles down below San Francisco. So I don't know how in the world that trip only took like 16 hours or whatever, when it seems like it should have taken maybe like 20, 24, something like that. But yeah, that was kind of strange. But anyway, I finally, they took me there. I did the time there in a supermax, like, federal penitentiary, and I was in the fish tank for a couple of weeks, and then processed out, put in, I think they called it like BPOT. We wore red shirts or whatever, and non-violent offenders. It wasn't like C. The guys in the blue shirts. I was there for a couple of weeks, I guess, and then I was transferred out to a conservation camp called Forestry or whatever, and I did the rest of it, the rest of the time there before getting the good time or whatever in parole. I did drug classes, and all the stuff that would satisfy the prison diversion requirements in California, because they would put a warrant out for my arrest or whatever, which is actually out. Because I think it was like 2 months on it. But I did all the stuff. The judge in Wyoming said they were going to call and they would tell California that I completed all the workbooks, the drug training classes or whatever. So I got all my certificates and everything, and I was living. And when I got out of Wyoming, instead of going back, I just stayed right there nearby because I was on parole. So I decided to stay in the state. And I had about $40,000 left, I guess, maybe $50,000 left of $300,000, which I did not spend at all. I made a down payment on a car, paid a few months on my car, bought some new records and stuff. And then sometime in November, after 911, November, December, something like that, the total for the mutual fund, I think is what it was. It was some kind of diversified mutual fund. The peak that it ever gone up to was like $314,000 was its worth. I think I paid like $55,000, $60,000 in taxes up front. And I was basically just paying my rent, getting a few new records here and there, and I traded in the old car, when I was grieving or whatever. I traded in the used car, made a down payment on the PT Cruiser, and I was paying for that, so it was very expensive. I wasn't really using a whole lot of money. And the drugs and stuff that I was doing at the time, meth, ecstasy, or whatever, I probably wasn't spending any more than, I don't know, maybe like $300 or something, like a month or every couple of months or something. I mean, it wasn't really like very much. I mean, I went out to clubs, raves or whatever, and I like to do meth at home or whatever and spin records, watch TV, like whatever. But yeah, as a stimulant or whatever, it was kind of fun staying up, around the clock or whatever, and just kind of, living. But with all that behind me, I ended up, I did the time there. I lived in Casper for the remainder of my parole. And let's see, there was a couple of times the police came to the house because my music was loud or something in the middle of the night, like once or twice. They said somebody had called. There was this parking lot across the street, like right down the street. And I don't know what was going on with that, but it was always empty. There was never a whole lot of activity. It seemed like the place was kind of, I don't know, haunted or whatever. I mean, maybe it was the name of the place or what, but it seemed like for the 55,000 people that should be there, I think I got a sense of about 4 or 5,000 people. But yeah, I mean, it's probably just me. It seems like it's been that way everywhere anyway. But I used to walk across this parking lot in the middle of the night. I used to go and get coffee late at night because I like staying up late, just like I am right now. I mean, it's like after midnight or whatever. I'm kind of like a nocturnal kind of person. So I used to walk across this parking lot, and I used to go to this gas station and this other convenience store that were right near the house. And I used to get like sandwiches, I'd get like energy drinks or whatever, fruit pies, on occasion, cigarettes and whatnot. And after I'd been doing that for a while, just kind of walking across the parking lot and stuff in the middle of the night, then suddenly like the police were parking there at night, and they never really said anything to me for walking past or whatever, but it just seemed kind of strange. And one time when I was walking, I think past their car, on the way to it, there was like this big white sphere above the car, with a rainbow around it. And one other time in the same area when I was crossing the street, there was like this big, like shadow sphere or something like over the street, like over the double yellow line or whatever in the street. And I don't know if those are like what 1800 UFOs or what, but I mean those are kind of some strange, just some strange anomalous things. I used to go down the cemetery when I lived there. I used to pack my backpack. I shopped at a local occult bookstore. I bought some books from Amazon back then because when I was getting out and they granted my parole, they were like, "You're not going to spend all that money, are you?" And I was, yeah, I didn't say anything, but I was like, well, no. I mean, I guess not. So I bought some books and stuff when I was there. I let my internet connection lapse or whatever because I thought it was unnecessary. Money being spent. I was living in a house that was a two-story house. Part of it was underground. Part of it was underground, and I was paying like $500 a month. It was like a three-bedroom and stuff. It wasn't great shape, but it wasn't really a bad place. I have no idea what the area was like. I mean, locally, whether it's considered, like a whatever side of town or not, a good area, bad area, or what. But yeah, I mean, it didn't really matter to me. I mean, the strange thing about it is that when I was in the hotel room for a week before I found it, I got up one day and I looked in the paper and randomly ran like where I had this vision, I guess you could call it, like a dream-like vision, and in it, there was this living room and, what it looked like and sort of the interior of this house and some people and whatnot. And when I called and looked at the listings and everything, and I called and looked at the one place, when I got to it, it was the same place. Like it was the same one from the like vision. And the only strange thing behind that is when I was still in the conservation camp and I was speaking to the parole officer on the phone, whose voice did not sound like the same person in real life when I got there, and started my monthly like visits to the parole board or whatever to the parole office. I mean, by the time I got to that particular officer, I don't think it was the same person. And it wasn't like the difference between like you don't look anything in real life and sound like you do like when you're on the phone. But the person when I was on the phone in the conservation camp was like, "I'll show you where to live, and I'll take you around town, and I'll all this stuff, but no one ever did, and that was the only shown like where to live that happened. So I don't know how to explain that, but I guess kind of the point I'm driving at is that even before that disappearance, right around the time of that earlier disappearance, and after, even after the parole, during the parole time or whatever, after going to the conservation camp, um, droves, gaggles, individuals, cars, all of them have been like instability in the region, appearing out of thin air as if they're crossing invisible barriers, walls, like whatnot. Obscurity, ephemeral, like fleeting. I mean, not every single person, or whatever, but all kinds of phenomenon. So I don't know if it's instability in the region, whether it's like the fringe of the woods between nature and civilization, or like what. But that's been consistent for 20 years now. So I lived there till 2005, December 2005. I didn't have, I think I applied for like one job, and then I checked on like one other, in the place right behind the house that was a fast food restaurant, and everything, and nothing really came of that. I was offered, I was offered maybe some work, getting paid under the table, but I turned it down because I just didn't feel comfortable. doing any kind of construction work or whatever, with it being all like, like that, under the table kind of stuff, because, and given the, hazardous material and all the other stuff, I mean, it's just really, better that, if I can't manage it or whatever, I have to be very careful about, distance and whatnot, because I don't really know what the effects can be on other people. Of the mutilation, the hazardous material, the radiation and stuff like that. I mean, as long as I can appear to have free will and be doing, what I'm doing, and do it myself or whatever, within whatever the limitations of stuff are, then I've pretty much been able to, keep my distance, and not worry about, other people being exposed to, what I've been exposed to. You know what I mean? What I've come into contact with. And since it is kind of an ongoing thing that apparently from the very beginning seems like it could be lifetimes, if not all the way up to like, almost 60, 70 years old or whatever. And today, at 11 this morning or 1 this afternoon, I think, I'm 52. So that's like 18 more years if it was hinting or implying something to do with a 70-year period from the beginning. So, so there's that, like whatever that is. And, but since I didn't stay there, I came, I called, said I needed to come home or whatever, and, live. And that was in like March, I guess, of 2006 or something. And I'm arriving at almost 30 minutes again. The only other weird thing, I had these, I had these prophetic, I guess, prophetic insight. I'm not sure exactly what they would be called. I think by the Lord's River, there were three, and from the sound of the visions they had, so an article I was reading, it sounded kind of like those, except for they were like these little magnetic, ephemeral, if you want to call them that, visions. There was about 16 of them that I've had so far. They almost correspond, maybe in Gray's Anatomy, you could call them like theoretical nervous lesions or something, like nerve lesions on the nervous system, the ganglia, the spinal cord. And since they said there were like 19 nerves that they've identified to date, and I think I've had 16 or 17 of the visions, there are these little golden magnetic images. Some are still, and a few were moving, and they were maybe like 2 seconds, 3 seconds long. They started right before the disappearance, and the most recent one was like 2009 or something, I think it was. And I was looking at a hair follicle that had come out of my hair that I pulled out of my head, or that had come out of my hair. It was a hair follicle, and as I looked at it, I was trying to look at it very closely to see, the gray, dark, light color, whatever. Pay special attention to your hair. And on it, or like near it, so like where the hair follicle was, like just above it, as if it was like a line on a piece of paper, and you could draw the animation like on the line as if it was like the ground. There was a guy with a sledgehammer, and he was hitting like the ground with a sledgehammer like over and over again. And there was another guy who was crouched or kind of squatting, and he was crouched down. And he was looking at the spot where the sledgehammer was impacting the ground, and that was the most recent one that I've had. I'll go over the other ones. I haven't figured out what they are, what they're about, but I'll go over them, maybe in the next one or the one after this. This is like 30 minutes, so I'm going to start the third one.